extraordinary that the Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court accuses you and your office of being zealots engaged in an obstructionist anti-death penalty agenda?
I'm not aware of how often something like that occurs, Senator.
Okay. If you just watched that clip and your jaw isn't on the floor, I don't know what to tell you. Because what you just saw is Ted Cruz doing what very few people in that chamber are willing to do. Asking the hard questions and refusing to accept a non-answer. Now I know Ted Cruz is a polarizing figure. Some of you clicked on this video ready to disagree with me. That's fine, stay anyway. Because what happens in this hearing goes beyond politics. This is about who we are putting on the federal bench for life, and whether those people will apply the law fairly or push an agenda from the courtroom. After watching this full hearing, I came away with serious concerns. So before we get into the rest of this, smash that like button, subscribe if you're new here, and drop in the comments. Do you think a judge's personal views should disqualify them from the bench? Let's get into it.
Much and Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Freeman, you disagree with the death penalty, don't you?
Senator, I support the rule of law, and if confirmed, I would apply the rule.
Ms. Freeman, that was not the question I asked you. You disagree with the death penalty, don't you?
Senator, if confirmed, I would apply the law regardless of any views that I may or may not have.
So you're hesitating because you're afraid to answer honestly.
Senator, respectfully, my understanding of the code of conduct for United States judges, which applies to judicial nominees, is that I am to refrain from commenting on matters of public policy that may come before me.
Really, this is the same person who submitted a photograph of yourself at a protest at the Philadelphia International Airport, labeled Ariana Freeman, Senator of Philadelphia, cheers and chants with others during a protest of President Donald Trump's executive order banning travel to the U.S. by citizens of Iraq, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. That's refraining from engaging in public policy?
Senator, I attended that public event in 2017, long before I was a judicial nominee and subject to the code.
Okay, well, the canons don't prohibit you sharing what your views are to this committee, and we have judges appear here all the time. It's not remotely credible that you don't have a view on the death penalty. You've devoted your entire professional career to representing criminals, to representing murderers, to representing rapists, to representing child molesters. You believe the death penalty is wrong. You have been a zealot against the death penalty. Is that true or false?
Senator, I have spent 12 and a half years fulfilling my duty to zealously advocate for the interests of my client, regardless of the sentence. Some of those sentences were death sentences. For the past 8 or so years, I have worked on non-capital cases.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, let's take the case that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court talked about, and Senator Hawley discussed this some. Terence Williams, one of your clients, had a long list of violent crimes, including armed robbery and another murder, just months before he killed Mr. Amos Norwood. Mr. Williams had separately been convicted of murdering a different victim by stabbing him 20 times in the head, the back, the chest, clean through his neck, before then trying to burn his body. Apparently, this method of murder was one Mr. Williams was fond of, because his second victim, Amos Norwood, he blackmailed him to meet him in a cemetery, where Williams beat Norwood with a tire iron until he died. And then the next night, Williams returned to burn the victim's body. Terence Williams is a bad guy. When you're faced with a repeat murderer about whom there are no serious questions of guilt, nobody doubts that this guy is a serial murderer. Your choice, you don't feel sympathy for the victims, you don't stand with the victims. Your choice, you've spent your life trying to save that murderer. And listen, here's what the Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said about your office. Because you keep saying zealously represented. You're right. Everyone is entitled to a defense. But it's not the job of a lawyer to be obstructionist. Is it the job of a lawyer to be obstructionist?
No, Senator.
Well, the Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court describes your office, says the extraordinary shadow capacity of the FCDO, your office, and its demonstrated tactics give me additional pause. Here the Chief Justice continues. Almost invariably without legitimate court appointment, without any Pennsylvania authorities' approval or role of oversight, this private group of federal lawyers pursuing an obstructionist anti-death penalty agenda have essentially anointed themselves a statewide de facto capital defender's office. Common tactics of the FCDO include multiple attempts to delay and obstruct cases, as well as attempts to unsettle and undermine Pennsylvania law. Do you think it's extraordinary that the Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court accuses you and your office of being zealots engaged in an obstructionist anti-death penalty agenda?
I'm not aware of how often something like that occurs, Senator.
Well, I'll tell you, I've practiced law a lot of years. This is extraordinary. And you know, Senator Booker asked, why do you choose to do this? I actually think Senator Booker's question was a great question. You said you care about public service. He rightly pointed out, well, you could have been a prosecutor. Many of us on both sides of the aisle have been prosecutors. You didn't want to be a prosecutor. You wanted to stand with the criminals because, as the Chief Justice has said, your office is engaged in a zealotry, in an agenda against the death penalty, game playing. And, you know, Senator Booker said, well, it's bad for your career to be a public defender. That actually is not the case. If you look at Joe Biden, last night Joe Biden said we shouldn't abolish the police, and all the Democrats stood and applauded. But interestingly enough, Joe Biden keeps nominating some of the leading advocates for abolishing the police to senior positions in the Department of Justice, and every Senate Democrat confirms them. Joe Biden keeps nominating DAs who refuse to prosecute violent crime to be federal prosecutors, and every Democrat votes to confirm them. And Ms. Freeman, you should feel comfortable. No matter how much your office has been called out for being anti-death penalty zealots, siding with capital murderers and ignoring the law, every Democrat on this committee is going to vote to confirm you. But I will tell you, this is a three-pronged strategy from the Democrats to abolish the police. Putting prosecutors in place who don't follow the law, putting judges in place who don't follow the law. And there's a reason we see crime rates and murder rates and carjacking rates skyrocketing across this country. Because the job of a judge is to follow the law, not to be a zealot pursuing a political agenda.
Senator's time has expired. I want to thank this panel for appearing before the Senate Judiciary Committee today. There may be written questions coming your way, which we hope you can respond to in a timely manner.
All right. Now you've seen the whole thing. Let's talk about it. First, the death penalty question. Cruz asks Freeman point blank, do you disagree with the death penalty? Simple question. And she will not give a straight answer. She hides behind the Judicial Code of Conduct. And look, I understand the principle. Judges shouldn't prejudge cases. I get that. But Cruz is right. Judges come before this committee all the time and answer questions about their views. This isn't a trap. This is the Senate doing its job, and she is stonewalling them. That's not humility. That's evasion. Then Cruz pulls out the protest photo. And this is where it gets interesting. Because this is the same woman who just told us she doesn't comment on matters of public policy. And here she is photographed at an airport protest against a presidential executive order. She says it was 2017, before she was a nominee. Fair enough. That's technically true. But it tells you where her convictions lie. You don't show up to a political protest because you have no opinion. You show up because you have a strong one. Now the Terence Williams case. I want to be fair here. Defense attorneys have a constitutional duty to represent their clients. That is a cornerstone of our justice system. But Cruz isn't attacking that principle, he's attacking the pattern. Because this isn't one case. This is a career. A deliberate, sustained, ideologically driven career of fighting specifically against the death penalty. And when the Chief Justice of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, not a politician, not a pundit, the Chief Justice, calls out your office by name for running an obstructionist anti-death penalty agenda without any state oversight or court appointment, you cannot just wave that away. That is serious. Cruz goes broader at the end, and I know some of you will tune out when he does. But strip away the partisan framing and ask yourself the core question. Should a federal judge hold a demonstrated ideological agenda that senior members of the judiciary have already called out? I don't think that's a Republican or Democrat question. I think that's just a common sense one. Federal judges serve for life. There is no election, no performance review, no accountability once they are confirmed. This hearing is the only chance the public has, through their elected representatives, to ask these questions. When Cruz asks them and gets nothing but deflection, that should concern all of us. He wasn't grandstanding. He was doing exactly what a senator is supposed to do. And for that, whatever you think of him personally, he deserves credit. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll see you in the next one.